roll into it. I think we have, there were 2 people of our 16. So 12. So there might be a couple more rolling in. Welcome everybody. Today is Tuesday, October 29th, 2024. This is, I don't know what, I don't necessarily time things by week, but I believe we're at like week, I want to say 8, according to the course calendar. Is it week 7? Sorry, week 7. Don't jump ahead here. Week 7. Yeah, and we've been rolling along, and I've been again, my students may or may not know that like this is just a blast for me because I get to invite all my friends or people that I want to be my friends in the class, and I get to listen to them. So it's kind of a good gig if you can get it. This is something that both Alec Koros and I coined this phrase a dozen years or so when we started teaching online and getting people to come in. We called ourselves the lazy professors because we hardly taught. We just got other people to come in, and it's very good if you can swing it. And as you all know, those of you that are in the classroom teaching, you know that bringing in a guest is like gold, even if they're not even that great. Sometimes it's like kids perk up because like, wow, this is not the normal face we get to see every day. And so, but the good news is with me is like the people that I bring in do not suck. So even more of a bonus. So, Wes Fryer. Yes, you're right. You're right. I think that is a smart move. Wes Fryer's here today, and Wes and I go back a long time. And by long time, I mean, and I'm gonna try to pinpoint when Wes came on my radar. And I want to say about 2004, 2005, Wes was part of a podcast, believe it or not, a podcast, which I don't even know if we were calling it podcast back then. Maybe we were. I don't really know. It was this cool thing where Wes, I believe he might have been in Texas at the time.
I was in camp. You're talking about the Skype cast through the
Yeah,
over
with
the pond
Ewan.
and through the fiber.
Yes.
I was in Manhattan, Kansas.
Okay.
Darren was in
Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Winnipeg. Yep.
Ewan,
Ewan was in Scotland,
Scotland.
and Miguel Gulen was in San Antonio, Texas.
There you go.
And then we
Yes.
had Jeff in Seattle. It was
Well, he wasn't, but where was he
or maybe the
teaching
second
overseas
one.
at the time?
Well, that wasn't UDEC. That was another Jeff. That was
Oh,
anyway,
yes, I remember. Yes.
he was like
I
at a
remember that,
service
Jeff.
center there. Yeah. But that was absolutely magical. And we did a couple of those, but that was just like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
And we used Skype, this old technology called Skype.
I don't even know if Skype is around still. It might be.
Either.
Yeah, so that was the first time I came across this guy and these gentlemen. By the way, I got to hang out with you in about a month and a half ago. He came through our fair city and got to see him for
I saw some
which
photos
was
on Facebook.
that was another, just again, you are so grateful for the people in your life like that. And so Wes was one of these people, just I think and again, he's had a few different roles within the schools, within schools, sort of tech director-ish, classroom teacher, sort of toggling in and out of those things, but all the while been very, very consistent in terms of his interest in really pedagogy and technology, not just technology, but pedagogy and technology. Wes is one of the very few people who still actively blogs, which is sadly not the norm. A lot of the people that we talk about and think about at the time were all fairly prolific in sharing, which is how I generally basically built my network, was through blogging. It wasn't really through social media. That kind of accelerated it in some respects, but the people that I got to know was Wes, and Wes was also very into using multimedia. So looking at video and images and audio and how that could be amplified. And again, in those days, in those mid 2000s, it was a little bit more difficult. We weren't carrying around the kind of phones we have today, so things weren't quite as mobile. So I'm giving you, Wes, this long introduction because I'm trying to I'm trying to, again, give people a sense of kind of our journey, but I don't want to take away from your perspective and your time. So the reason that I invited Wes to come in and share specifically is because of all of the guests that we have. He is the very closest to the actual classroom practice. And so for those of you who are spending your time in classrooms, I think this will be really, really relevant to you. And just kind of want to, and I know Wes is just always thinking, always kind of doing neat stuff. So let's give a warm Saskatchewan University of Regina welcome to Wes Fryer.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Uh, let's see, Deanie, would you mind giving me the sharing rights? I will.
Should have it. I think it's open for everybody.
Is it? Okay, it says someone else is sharing. The host isn't allowing multiple presenters
Oh,
sharing for this
okay.
meeting.
That's yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Meanwhile, I'll share. I've got my esports shirt on. So we started our esports team. I am not the esports coach. I am the co-sponsor at our middle school of the gaming club, and we do Minecraft education and lots of analog games like board games and Pente and chess and stuff like that. But let me see if I can manage to share the right desktop. This is always more fun when you have two screens. There we go. And let's see. Can you all see my slides? Give me a thumbs up.
Beautifully, yeah.
Okay, cool. It's lovely to be with you all. And this still is magical. I mean, I don't remember what was that, 20 20 years ago when we were doing this Skype and connecting people, but it's amazing. So I'm coming to you from just outside Charlotte, North Carolina. I live in a small town. Well, it's just kind of part of the bigger 2 million greater Charlotte area, but it's called Stallings or Matthews. And tonight I would like to make this interactive because you know what? We're all in the same virtual space, so why not be interactive? I did record a little 17-minute video of some nuts and bolts of things I do daily with Google Slides and Google Sites and Google Sheets, and I have the link to that. But I've dropped a link into the chat. And this first picture is from probably the end of the 96-97 school year. It was my first year to teach fourth grade, Lubbock, Texas. This was my first class. I think I had 17 kids, and boy, lots of memories. I graduated from the Air Force Academy in 1992. I got a couple more degrees from Texas Tech University along the way. I got a master's in elementary ed and a doctorate in curriculum and instruction. This is my 29th year in education. But I've just done a bunch of different things, kind of starting as a classroom teacher, becoming an administrator in higher ed as a director of distance learning. I worked for AT&T for a couple years in Oklahoma as what they called a director of education advocacy. Worked for a nonprofit museum, went independent for 5 years, traveling the country and the world presenting, and that sounds really really sexy, but we don't have universal health care in the United States. And so not having your own health insurance and knowing how much your paycheck might be that month, it was challenging. So I went back in the classroom in 2000, let's see, let me get these right, 2013, and was teaching fourth and fifth grade STEM in a town called Yukon, Oklahoma, where Garth Brooks, he is actually lives in Tulsa, but he grew up in Yukon. It's like the claim to fame is Garth Brooks Boulevard there in Yukon, just to the west of Oklahoma City. And that really kind of launched me on a lot of focus on STEM and STEM education. I was recruited to come to a private school, Cassidy School in Oklahoma City, for 4 years as the director of education. And then because of some personnel issues, which I will not disclose since we may have this video shared, I needed to make a change. And fortunately, I was given an opportunity to pivot into the classroom again and be an instructional coach. And I was there for COVID. I got to help all of our faculty navigate all of that challenging time. I actually really enjoyed part of that. Our oldest graduated from college at that time, came home. We didn't think we'd see him again. He lived with us for over a year before he left for his life away from home. So I've dropped the link into the chat. I will put a link to these slides on what I call my presentation wiki. I'm a rather avid oversharer. So I will have a bunch of links in here and encourage you to check them out. A while back, I created this after page where I quit Twitter in November last year. It just became too much of a dumpster fire. And so now, like a few folks, I find myself on, about 9 different platforms sharing. But these slides are available, and I encourage you to check that out. That's my family. My wife and I are now empty nesters. We moved from Oklahoma a little over 2 years ago to come to North Carolina for me to teach STEM full time as a classroom teacher. And so, like I said, being in my 29th year of education, it really is lovely to be back in the classroom on a 10-month contract. And my wife is now teaching at my school as well. She started off at a public school here in North Carolina. I have been a public educator most of my life. I was adding it up. So I guess I was at Cassidy as the tech director and teaching middle school technology and instructional coaching. I was there for 7 years. And then this is starting my 3rd year. So this is starting my 10th year in private school. And it really is interesting. And I'm happy to answer questions about any of this stuff. Our kids and our fur babies. Our son Alex is married. He lives in Houston. He works for NASA. He is a robotics engineer, and he leads a team called the Magic Team that does the pre-engineering for the uncrewed SpaceX missions, and they figure out where the robotic arm has to move the robotic arm. He graduated from Colorado School of Mines, got married a year ago, and he um, actually has some animations that he's made on the nasa.gov site. So you can Google Alex Fryer NASA and you can see some of these animations. He had to teach himself how to code in Unity as one of his first tasks when he joined Booz Allen Hamilton. That's the contractor that he works for. And hopefully, well, we're going to see him for Thanksgiving, he and his wife. And there's a wonderful space education conference that is in Houston at the Johnson Space Center in February. My wife and I went to it a couple years ago, and we're hoping to go back. Our middle daughter, Sarah, is still in Oklahoma City. She graduated college a little over a year ago. She takes the LSAT for law school here in November and working full-time at Trader Joe's. Knows she doesn't want to do that forever, but she also knows she doesn't want to work in the Oklahoma legislature. She was an intern there for a year and had an interesting time as a political science major. Our youngest, Rachel, on the left, is a sophomore at the Air Force Academy. She's an astronautical engineering major. Jumped out of an airplane this past summer, has had challenges with water survival. You just can't wait to see her. We got to see her for just a little bit for Parents Weekend in September. So here it is, Dean, 2011. That is the only photo I could find of us of like 50,000 on Flickr. But ISTE, which is the tech conference of sort of the biggest tech conference, I guess, that we have in the United States, other than Florida and Texas. But I've gone to it a bunch, and this is Dean and I with Tammy Parks. And it really is great to connect because I've learned so much from Dean, and we do go back. The K-12 online conference is a conference that we helped co-facilitate back in 2006 for the first time. And that was a real transformative experience for me. I want to tell you a couple stories, and then I just want to open it up for questions because this can go a number of different directions. But I'll mention 2 projects which may be of interest to some of you. As my camera falls off my iMac. Sorry about that. I have this fancy setup, which is really not very fancy, with Velcro, and sometimes my camera falls off. Sorry about that. Since 2013, I've maintained this website called showwithmedia.com. There are now, 14 different media products, and there's a definition, examples, tutorials. I love to create media. I love to teach students to create media. I think that I think the video is the pencil of the 21st century. And in order to become a more savvy media consumer, which we all need to be as citizens, we can do that through media creation, not only through studying media literacy and learning about it, but also by creating media. So get to do that for my day job, and I continue to update that, although there's, I'm sure, a lot of older links on there. And then the other thing I'll mention, and this relates, Dean, to our upcoming election next week, which we are exactly a week away now. back in 2019, I had a chance to go to Rhode Island, to Providence, Rhode Island, to the what was called the Summer Institute in Digital Literacy that Renee Hobbs put together. And Kristen Hokinson is probably a familiar name to Dean. She's one of these folks that has been around a long time with us, blogging and writing. And so she was involved. And basically, it was a week of studying media literacy. And I became really fascinated with how in the heck are these troll armies attacking people, and what's going on with social media, and how are, radical extreme voices being so outsized, and what could we possibly do about this, and how do I even figure it out? So I started an inquiry project then in 2019, which became called Conspiracies and Culture Wars. The last year I've been teaching some adult micro-credential courses through the Media Education Lab, and you can access that, the resources, um, just a lot of stuff. And some of that I share in a private face group that I facilitate, because as you all know, I'm sure, when we talk about politically sensitive topics these days, we have to be careful. But I really do want to understand these issues, and I want to figure out how to teach about them without getting fired. And so part of what came from that project was a unit that I'm now teaching for the sixth time called Fruit Loop Conspiracy Theories. And we study the Apollo moon landings and how we really did land on the Apollo on the moon, and Apollo really did happen. But why is it that some YouTubers and others say we never did? And how do we basically apply web literacy strategies to avoid getting sucked down rabbit holes and listening to those kinds of extremist voices? So I'll kind of start some stories from North Carolina. My school sent me to Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh in the summer of 2022, just a few weeks before we packed up 2 U-Hauls and drove 3 cars 1,000 miles across the country from Oklahoma City to Charlotte. And it was wonderful. So interesting, though, that their robotics institute has because Dean mentioned pedagogy, the strategy or the philosophy of teaching robotics is extremely scripted. And we were using Lego Spike Prime robots, same kits that I had with my kids, but it was absolutely, here's what to build, here's what to put the pieces together, do it exactly like this. Now, these Spike Prime robot kits have over 500 pieces. So the first semester, this wasn't much of a problem because we were opening the kits. But then the next semester, where's that wheel? Where's that part? And so I found it fascinating, as this program has now shifted to a colleague of mine, and he has a real different approach that's much more open-ended and much less scripted in that same way. But I've taught 5 different courses since I've been at Providence Day School, which is the private school where I am now teaching. And you can access a lot of the curriculum and lessons for all of those courses off of my website. I love Google Sites. Google Sites is free. We are a Google school. I've been at Google schools for quite a while. The trick is I pay about $10 a year to own wesfryer.com. And I go into GoDaddy and I have to put in some codes. And once it's in, it's in. But then lessons.wesfryer.com goes to my site. And I use my site every single day as a teacher. That's where I share my slides that I use to introduce my lesson and tell my kids what I'm doing. And then I share a number of lessons there as well. So I also taught an engineering design class the first 2 years that I was at Providence Day, which was just for 6th graders. A lot of what we do is try to get our middle schoolers excited about STEM. We really have to work on recruitment for females. There are so many more males that sign up for our classes for a host of different reasons, but that's one of the things I'm really passionate about is, engineering for everyone, coding for everyone, trying to help make the learning so enticing and fun that in some cases kids don't know how much hard work they're doing, but also so that they find success and they perceive themselves as successful doing math, doing engineering, doing coding, and that they want to do more. So this semester, I am teaching 3 courses. I'm teaching the computer programming class for our middle schoolers, and these are all this year for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students. I teach a web design class, and I teach computer applications, which I like to call media literacy, but in our course catalog, it's called computer apps. That used to be the typing class that also did Microsoft Office, and I know Dean can relate to that because of our ages. But these classes, in some situations, were required. It's now an elective. We are one-to-one iPad at our school. I wish this class was required for everyone, but I have a lot of autonomy, and that is very unique in my experience in schools. And even in my own school, our department is very unique because we do have so much latitude to design our lessons and our units. I'm the only person teaching each one of these classes, and that's also a benefit. So I'm very thankful for that. Computer programming, and I'll be happy to dive into any of this if you'd like to talk about. I love Scratch coding. This is my 17th year to use MIT's block-based programming language Scratch, which is free, which is multilingual. There are millions of projects created by students and adults all over the world. We just finished our maze unit. We animated our name. We did a 5 irritating things project with animations. And then students made a maze, and they had to make a 2-level maze. And this is absolutely the most amazing year I've ever had. I have 20 students in this class. I have 2 females, 2 girls, and then I've, got 18 boys. And that's kind of almost standard. I had 4 last spring, 4 females. I'd love to have more, but we played each other's mazes. We had a double elimination tournament, had so much fun. The other language we use is Microsoft Make Code. It is part of Minecraft education. And so a project, I guess, do I have some videos here? I muted these. A project that I've been doing with my students now for a couple years is we are building an outpost on Mars in Minecraft using code. And so my communications department came in and shot a video about this. We make animations in Scratch. We study and learn a lot about space and about specifically NASA's Artemis program. We learn about SpaceX. I'm a real space geek. I love space education. I think there's so much to learn there and share with kids about how we're called to be stewards of the planet. I'm inspired by the fact that ISS is still a collaboration between all you lovely Canadians and here, us in the States. Our Russian friends, we're still collaborating with the Russians, even though this war has been going on for over a year in Ukraine, as well as other European partners in Japan. It inspires me a lot. So anyway, love that class. Web design, primarily Google Sites. We use Canva extensively for image creation and talking about image design. All my kids have portfolios. We also have been using Adobe Express and just finished travel pages about that. We've been studying copyright and fair use. We just did Google Forms, and we're doing a data analytics unit right now. We're just doing basics with Google Forms and Sheets, but our lesson today was literally making charts in Google Sheets. And I'd love to dabble in some more complex data visualization, because I absolutely believe everybody needs to understand how to use data, work with data, how data is used to tell a story, how often data is used to manipulate an audience, and it can be used in propaganda, and not only for commercial advertising purposes, but also for political purposes. So I've got little trailers for each one of our courses because we have to recruit, and so I make video trailers about those, and you can check those out. And this is my computer apps class. Like I said, I like to call that media literacy. It does cover a whole lot of basics with Google tools. I totally reject the digital native thesis that, these kids are just natives with their technology and they can do anything. Young people tend to have less fear with technology, but that doesn't mean that their executive function is fully formed and that they know and understand not only appropriate use, but also how to use these different tools, and they know how to communicate with these different tools. We do have a lot of media literacy today because we are inundated, most of us, with media. And so it's an exciting time to be teaching about media literacy and multimedia communication. But we really need to be teaching about this and talking about it and developing these kinds of skills. I want to stop talking. So let me just open it up for questions. kind of given you a lot, and I'm happy to go different directions. I think we have a pretty eclectic audience from what Dean said. And I was reading your blogs, and you have an amazing instructor. I wish I could be taking this class with you, because Dean has so much to offer. And truly, both of us, one of the things we share is a love of writing, a love of communication, and I think probably a deep belief in the power of blogs and the ways that writing and hyperlink digital writing can connect us to other people, can open up all kinds of doors and help us learn. So what can I answer for y'all? I'll stop sharing my screen. And feel free to raise your hands or whatever you want to do. Don't be shy. I don't bite. And just if you'll say, tell me your name for your question, and then just your context a little bit. What are you doing in education at this point, or what are you aspiring to do? So yes, go right ahead, Lisa.
I'm Lisa. I'm a teacher in small town Saskatchewan. Is this a private school, and what does it cost to come there? What's the rest of their day look like outside of the classes you teach?
So it is somewhere around, I think, $30,000 a year to go to our school. In Oklahoma, it was around 20 something thousand, which just blows my mind. We have about 2,100 students. We're on a block schedule that's a 6-day rotation. So their kids have, I think, 5 classes a day. I teach, this is the most humane schedule I've ever had as a teacher, because I've had, crazy schedules of constant teaching with almost no break. I usually, I teach between 2 and 4 classes a day. So sometimes I will just teach 2 classes. It's a little bit more like a college feel. I could teach 5 or 6 sections if I wanted to, but 4 is considered to be a full load. So these kids actually have what I perceive to be a very traditional curriculum when it comes to teaching. I think the math that they have, for instance, is a paper-based, packet-based setup for most courses, I think, which has been used for a number of years. And while there is technology present, it really varies the degree to which teachers are integrating technology. I am a 7th grade advisor, so that means that twice every 6-day rotation, I will see my students, and we'll sometimes get together for assembly. We'll sometimes do things like now we are preparing for a student-led conference. They will happen next week on Thursday and Friday, and we will basically we'll help the kids prepare to reflect on their learning for the year, and they'll share about each one of their classes. And so one of the things that we do in private school, we did this in Oklahoma and here too, is we write pretty extensive comments for every single child that we have, which can be very time consuming. This year, I was able to use ChatGPT in some wonderful ways. I use Canvas a lot to give comments to my students. So I was able to export my entire grade book from Canvas, which had not only grades, but all my comments. I have my students fill out a reflection form, and then I also have my skills for each class. And so I loaded all that into a conversation with ChatGPT and shared an example of what I wanted it to write. And then it gave me a really nice set of 3 paragraphs that I used as a draft for each student. And then I was able to give that feedback back to them. So what grade do you teach, Lisa? Are you elementary, middle, high?
I'm in elementary, and I'm our learning support teacher, so I am in charge of all our kids with special needs.
Wow. It's interesting because we don't have full IEPs like I'm used to in public school, but we definitely do have kids on learning plans, and we have some support for students with special needs. But it is interesting in the private school world, because the rules are different for the kind of support that is required or not required, to provide for students. So
Would those people pay more for the extra support that their child would need in your school?
not in our school, to my knowledge. I think there are some schools that do that, and there certainly is a wide range of different schools. One of my good friends actually came from a school called the Fletcher School, which was really oriented, as far as I understand, to students. Be careful I don't misspeak, but there was a lot of students on the autism spectrum. There was a lot of kids that have ADHD, And so there was lots and lots of support for those kids in really, really small class sizes. But that was a school that was really catering specifically to students with those needs. It really is wild what a landscape of pro private school we've had. We've had regulation and laws and underfunding for public ed for so long that, like, in Oklahoma, when I first started in 2015 in a private school, they were still concerned about making enrollment, and we have lots and lots of kids who apply to try to get in our school, and we have to turn away a lot of kids every single year. But it is really, really expensive. When we were in Oklahoma, we were fortunate that at that time, as an employee, I qualified for an 85% tuition remission. So there's no way our youngest child would have been able to go. And I'm very, very thankful. She went 7th grade through 12th grade. She started in public school, and our other two were public the whole way. But it really is eye-opening to get a glimpse. And this isn't representative of all situations, but we're a really big sports school. We've won the North Carolina state football title the last 2 years at least, and we're very, very dominant. And that's really different from the Oklahoma school that I came from. So there's lots of different situations, but I'm very thankful to be in a supportive environment, especially from an instructional standpoint, where I have a lot of autonomy and freedom. And at this point in my career, that is something I really, really love and appreciate. I do collaborate with colleagues, particularly when I was doing engineering. I was collaborating very closely with another teacher who was teaching those same sections. But for the other classes I'm doing now, I'm the only one who's teaching them, and that has some benefits. We've probably all been in situations where we've got multiple teachers teaching the same section, and either the school says you have to be on the same page, or you just, you want things to be equitable, and parents can expect that too. So.
Wes, my name is Jason. I'm a principal at a small First Nations high school in Saskatchewan here, grade 7 to 12. We've got a cell phone ban kind of across the province with varying degrees of success in different divisions. I was watching your TED talk on becoming your family's digital witness, and I was kind of intrigued by that idea. Do you apply that digital storytelling to any of your lessons with students, and if so, do you have any links that you can share around that?
Absolutely. You just happened to ask about one of my favorite things. I guess if you do a TED Talk on something, you probably are passionate about it. On my lesson site, I have a drop down underneath the lessons, and these are not all the lessons, but this is a lot of the lessons I do. And the top one is our family oral history project. So I just absolutely love oral history. I lost my mother a year ago Christmas, and I'm very, very thankful that I did some StoryCorps style interviews with her using actually the StoryCorps app. My dad is 84 now, still with us, coming out for Christmas, but we've interviewed him. And on this page, I've got some different resources relating to family and community oral history. And let's see if I can do some chatting while I am doing this too. Let's see, where's the chat? It's always, you feel like you're launching, or I don't know what the right metaphor is, but I'm like, where is my chat window? I see my pictures. And then Zoom changes, right? So they switch things around. Okay, there it is. It was on my other screen. Okay, so here is that link. When I was in Oklahoma, I started what was then a nonprofit called Story Chasers. Instead of chasing the storms, we chase the stories. And so that website is now a passion project of mine, but I am still doing some workshops. I have been volunteering at a local historical association, the Mint Hill Historical Society, and in July I did a 2-part workshop on family and community oral history. So we talked about capturing those stories with audio. We talked about, we showed different examples. This is fun. This is a 1972 reel-to-reel tape, which my grandmother recorded with family in Wyoming, in Powell, Wyoming, just west of Yellowstone Park near Cody. On Christmas Day in 1972, and we have a a business here in town that converts that to digital. So I got that made into MP3s this summer before a family reunion. This is my dad and his 93-year-old sister from Cody listening to that, not having heard the voice of their, their mom for decades and decades. So more examples, resources. And so basically the the Story Chasers website is the best resource that I would have to recommend. I have a whole bunch of examples of digital stories. So audio stories, which is where I have my kids work. It's just much less complex than going into video. But let's step into video and create what I call a photo story. And when I was in Oklahoma with other teachers, we partnered with the State Department of Education and had a digital centennial project for the state and facilitated over 1,000 stories that were created by Oklahoma teachers and students. And those were made with this program called Photo Story 3, which was a Windows XP program that I'm sure Dean remembers, and maybe some of you do as well. In fact, some of those programs, this Lily and John and the Dirty 30s, those are both great Oklahoma stories, and those were made with Photo Story 3. Quick edit videos, which are actual full motion video, but they just don't involve much or very much editing at all. A video story, which is going to be more of cuts and scenes and some planning that's going to go into that. What's called a narrated sketch note. One of my show with media products is a sketch note, and I teach my students now how to narrate that. And that's easier to do on an iPad than a Chromebook. You can still do it on a Chromebook, but it's a narration like you might have seen, I don't know, Stephen Johnson. There's some other authors that have these kinds of narrated sketch notes where they talk over in that case, it's the drawing. This is not drawing live, but it's the drawing that we're talking over. And then a polished documentary would be the next last category. And then I guess I have multimedia enhanced stories. So I love maps. Geography was one of my undergraduate majors. One of the trips that I was the last international trip I went on was to Cairo to a conference. And this is an example of a geomap. So I have connected photos and videos to different locations on a Google map. And so you can explore Cairo and see some images and things like that from our trip there. So that would be my best attempt at sharing some resources there. And I would love to answer questions and help with that, because I feel like I could win the lottery tomorrow and I'm still going to want to do oral history and digital storytelling. And it's one of those projects that my kids and parents really give good feedback about, because they're doing a project that's more than just an assignment. It does involve a lot of good skills, but it's also about listening, asking questions, social skills. But sometimes those kids hear stories from family members that mom and dad never heard before. And that's just really super exciting. So let's go to Hanifat. Am I going to say your name right? And then we'll go to Jenny.
Hi, Wesley. Yeah, that's right. Thank you for thank you for the enlightenment. Okay, so I have just one question. Based on your experience, what are like the best practices that you have adopted to ensure that students are actually ethically using the media?
They're ethically using media.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it's good to have a program focused on digital citizenship and having some language around appropriate use of technology. And I think it can be good to have some mini lesson discussions about those kinds of things, about photos, about permission. I think it's important to talk about deep fakes. I'm unfortunately convinced that most of our schools, just like we had issues with sexting, and we still do, right? Where someone has a photograph and it gets shared with someone, and then suddenly it's all over the school. I had a friend whose granddaughter had to move and leave Edmond, Oklahoma, where we lived, because the embarrassment and the drama around a sexting photo was so huge that they literally left the community. I think, unfortunately, with the prevalence of AI tools and the ways in which images can, be manipulated and all kinds of things can be done, this is just going to become more prevalent within our schools. And So having conversations with students about that. The previous question that we had, I think, was that Joshua, about, you mentioned cell phones and the policies. We're, wrestling with that, just as all schools are. I think that it is important for teachers to be able to have students put their technology devices away at times, but I also am a real advocate of wanting students to learn how to use their tools appropriately and make choices with that. Now, a sixth grade boy has a different level of executive function than an eighth grade girl or a high school student, or, it does vary on their abilities to self-regulate. But these are very addictive tools, and I think that they can be wonderful, but they can also cause a lot of I've used this, I've stolen it from a friend. A pencil or a pen. This can be used in devious ways. It can be used in real powerful ways. And so we've got to learn to help students use the tools appropriately. And I think having a faculty that is conversant and comfortable having those conversations with students, having really clear expectations for what our use, guidelines are in the classroom at school. And then for administrators, I think it's a huge challenge because there's these blurred lines between what happened, where did this happen, where did this take place. And I don't know Canadian law, but US law, I mean, in the public school, it has to do with a disruption and whether or not this causes disruption. And there's a case called the Tinker case. I took this class as a graduate student, which says that, in the United States, students don't abdicate their constitutional rights at the schoolhouse gate. They still have them, but the blurred lines are so difficult because our technology is with us all the time. And I think that it's really important that those are issues that we work on navigating, not only with our faculty, but also with our community. And that we try to, we're trying to raise good humans. We're trying to raise, kids, young adults, human beings that are going to be able to make good and constructive choices with their technology. And so amplifying those good uses and trying to talk about why we need to respect people's rights. I do this with iPads frequently, almost every week, where there's pictures being taken. Wait a minute, did you get permission? If we're, you don't have the right to just take a picture of anybody that you want and do whatever you want to with that picture. Jenny. I think you need to unmute.
Sorry. I'm a learning facilitator at a school here in Saskatchewan, or at a school division. And I just have a question, you kind of started to touch on it, but I have a colleague friend who we keep having this disagreement. They really believe that in grade 3 and 4, there should be 0 computers in the classroom, period. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that, because I can see both sides to it.
Sure. So one way to address that is to see what kids can do with coding and with computational thinking. One of the things that my short answer is that we're living in a digital world, and I think that we need to figure out what does it look like in terms of graduated, use. I don't think we should be giving first graders full-on iPhones with no restrictions, and I've been at schools where parents do that. But at the same time, I think that we have to be wary of technology bans. And so one way to address this is through positive use. So my wife and I have both been involved with the Scratch programming language for a while. There's a great app called Scratch Junior that is great for littles. And I've been involved with some of this, but she's done more with the first, second, and third graders, and telling stories, being able to create games, and the kids are working with math and they're thinking computationally. We live in an algorithmic world where so much of our lives are influenced by algorithms. And so I feel like a part of basic literacy is actually algorithmic literacy. And eventually, as we get older, learning about the ways that algorithms are created with purpose for particular audiences and how all of that works. So if you have a chance to be able to have some kids get excited about stories they've created with a tool like Scratch Junior, which is a free app for the iPad and for an Android tablet. There's also a PBS version called PBS Scratch Junior, which uses the public television characters, which I'm not super familiar with, but it's just another range of characters or sprites that can be used for those. So I think that we can disable students with their technology literacy if we prolong their technology fast. We did have parents, wanting to wait until 8th grade. What is it? Jonathan Haidt, is that his name? Who's written this book, and he's on all kinds of podcasts talking all about, the correlation and saying, pointing the finger, this is technology and social media that's caused all of these harms. I think it's important.
She just held it up.
There you go. Talk about all of that, because that's driving a lot
Yeah.
of the issues. But your school needs to make decisions about what your values are and what are the skills that you want to help students develop. If my students are going to come to me in 5th grade not having touched a device and a computer, I mean, yeah, I'm going to be able to help them get up to speed, but they're going to be able to go further and do more and become more adept communicators and users of the technology if they have an opportunity to use it appropriately. And so that's also part of it as well. What are we asking those 3rd graders to do with their technology? If they're using it to tell stories, if they're learning, to navigate information, if they're learning to use images and communicate with images. I think it's just as important today to learn how to communicate with images and visual media as it is with written media. It's wild, right? You and I can now speak into a microphone on a smartphone or a laptop or a desktop, whatever, and we can have that image created from the words that we've spoken or that we've written, and those tools are coming to video. And so I think that if we would, and we've got, I've known people that wanted their kids to just do cursive handwriting and learn Latin, and everything traditional. And I don't think that's necessarily going to harm children, but at some point, I think that we risk, disabling them if we are going to deny them access to the tools of literacy today. And the ways in which we communicate in our literate society are quite different than they were in the 1950s or even in the 1990s. And so I think those conversations, they're decisions to make as a family about smartphones and access, and not just phone and what you're going to be able to do with it, restrictions and all that stuff. But I wouldn't want to teach at a school where there is no technology for 3rd graders, but I'd want the technology to be used in appropriate ways and be very thoughtful, not just, hey, here it is, go wild. We don't do that as teachers, but we'd want that to be appropriate. Oh, we got a couple more questions. Let's go to Ayodele. Help me with your name.
Yes,
Okay?
Ayodele. Yeah, correct.
Ayodele, hello.
Hi, thank you, Wes. Just posting to the question to the question you just answered. I was thinking of there is this aspect of unplugged activities that research do talk about, and when we talk about young learners for grade 3s, I'm thinking, I really don't know, in situations where probably schools don't want to use technology, what is your view on the aspect of unplugged activities in enhancing their city skills? That's my first question. Then going back to your slides, you mentioned the issue of robotics, I think when you were at Carnegie Mellon University. I want to know, when you were in the university, do you people also enhance teachers' abilities and skills on this issue of robotics? Because a lot of times when teachers hear about robotics, they see it as, this engineering is not something for everybody and things like that. So due to that, you see it's more focused on maybe engineering teachers or science teachers taking those courses. And this is a skill that cuts across all subjects knowledge, interdisciplinary nature. So I want to know within the context of the US, because actually I just moved here to Saskatchewan, and I'm originally from South Africa, and I've done quite some works on, I'm a researcher actually. So we've done quite some works on coding and robotics with our own pre-service teachers back while I was still a lecturer. And one thing we've always tried to do was to understand how teachers accept this. In the South African curriculum, it's newly introduced. So we have these teachers building walls around coding robotics. So it's like we try to preach, let me use the word preach to them for them to accept it. So what is the context like in the US and how is it being addressed? Because from the way you presented your profile, it's to me, it looks like you are more like one of a genius where people really don't want to go into that field, and you happen to be one of the, let me say, resource persons in that field. So how are we bridging the gap between experts and teachers so that this skill will cut across the various teachers? They'll be able to integrate it in their various subjects. A lot of people restrict it to science, which is not supposed to be, or to technology, which is not supposed to be.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. Okay, those are, I think I have a pretty good handle on your second question. Can you repeat your first question or just reword it just a little bit for me?
First question was your view on the issue of unplugged activities.
Unplugged activities.
Yeah,
Sure.
unplugged
Yep.
activities.
Yeah, you bet. Let's see. So this is a Google site that is still around. We partnered, my wife and I, with a local, it was actually a WordPress blogging. They made plugins and themes and things like that for WordPress. But Scratch out of MIT would host Scratch Days. And so we had some different Scratch Days. This goes back 10 years ago to June 2012, and we did some different activities. This September 2016 was one that my wife led that was with PBS Scratch Junior. And some of this were unplugged activities. Code.org is a great organization that has created a wide variety of free resources for teachers around the world. And I just Googled code.org unplugged. This is a computer science fundamentals class that's designed to be done in an unplugged environment. So if you do not have access to technology or student technology, there certainly are some good things that you can do in an unplugged environment. But I think it is really important to find computers of some kind that the students are going to be able to use and have agency over. I didn't show you the Scratch website. This is actually my Scratch profile. I don't know, Dean, if you can email me or just download the chat, I'll get these links and I'll put these onto the slideshow as well. So these are all projects that I have created and shared in Scratch. And this is fun. This is a project that we're doing right now called, we're telling spooky stories because it's Halloween coming up. And so this is a project template. Oh, this is a copy of it. Hang on. Maybe this is the real one. I don't know if I had a second one. Here we go. And so my kids have remixed this, and then they've created their own spooky story that involves animation. And I'm trying to think if I can think of a good one here that I can click on. That I don't remember what this one was. Anyway, there's animation, there's sound, there's recorded voice, there's storytelling in that. In terms of thinking about STEM and the ways in which that is adopted and embraced by teachers, so our school is Providence Day School, and we have reconstituted our computer science department into what's called ideas. Now, some of this, to be honest and frank with you, there's a lot of marketing that goes in with private schools and differentiation for different schools. Ideas for us stands for innovation, design, entrepreneurship, analytics, and sustainability. And we've got a variety of courses in both our high school and our middle school that students can take. But to your point, thinking about Carnegie Mellon, and robotics and sometimes the intimidation which teachers can feel, I think professional development is essential. I have been teaching STEM and doing these courses for a while, but I hadn't taught a full-on robotics class. And so I was very thankful that my school sent me for a week in person to Carnegie Mellon to, you know, be able to be a student and to have curriculum and to come back and be able to use it. This is the link to my robotics curriculum and page. I have a link to their textbook. So this is called their CS STEM Network textbook, and this is openly accessible. Anybody can access this. And so here are the lessons for Spike Prime for programming. And for instance, let's see, here's a lesson that's about steering. And so you would make the robot, they would have you build the robot according to their instructions. They called it the Taco Bot. And then they had, you know, real detailed instructions as far as how to build it, how to program it, how to code it, all these animations. I found this really, really helpful. But the way that I situate my teaching, and certainly did with respect to engineering, is with design. And so teaching students how to design and solve problems using engineering concepts and using different tools. So this was a kind of a culminating unit, which was a Pinewood Derby unit. So the kids actually used Tinkercad, which is a free, I don't know if I've got, do I have races in here? I don't know what this is. This is me talking about, no, this is me talking about putting axles in. I thought this was a better example of presenting. Anyway, sometimes kids that are in Cub Scouts here in the States, and this may be true in Canada as well, have a chance to build these Pinewood Derby cars. Well, we designed them in Tinkercad and then 3D printed them and then raced them. And so we learned about aerodynamics and we learned about, you know, lift and drag and all these different things. And so, but it was a design challenge. So I think professional development is essential. I think it's great to bring people in who've had some experiences with some engineering. But, you know, design doesn't necessarily only mean engineering. There's a lot of different ways that we bring design in and the design process. I have not attended their workshop, but I would love to do that. There is what's called a D school at Stanford, and I'll drop the link in. And we had teachers at my previous school, it's just dschool.stanford.edu. We had some teachers go there, and it was interesting because we had a lot of English teachers, and at the Air Force Academy, we would have called them fuzzy majors versus technical majors, but folks that were not in a STEM career field as a major, but that were very interested in design and learning the design process and learning project management and, you know, how we could take an idea to solve a problem, you know, from you know, initial brainstorming all the way through to prototyping and creating some kind of a product. So we have a makerspace. Many schools in the States have gone away from having a, you know, wood shop, metal shop, vocational shop inside the high school, but they now have some maker spaces. I don't think it's an exact replacement. I have a lot of other thoughts about that, but one of the things we're doing is trying to encourage students to be innovators, to think entrepreneurially, but to develop a capacity to design and solve problems. And so our robotics classes are now taught with that much more in mind, where students have a challenge, but there's not a recipe of here, build this exactly like I'm telling you. It's like, here's a bunch of pieces and, you know, here are concepts, you know, build this, and it also works functionally a lot better when you've got a 500-piece kit and it's all messed up because last year's kids didn't put it all in the right places and whatever. So I think that the way it's being taught now is much better than honestly what I was doing that year with the Carnegie Mellon approach. But people have different ideas about pedagogy, and I'm welcome.
Yeah.
Their
Yes,
on it.
thank you very much, Wes. I think I like the aspect of the market space you just made mention of, because I've also been thinking something in that space. When we talk about robotics, I know it cuts across all various fields. And the pedagogy behind it is very important, not just for the market space, but also for, let me say, every teaching. Like it's a central, or let me say, it's a basic literacy for kids of today because we live in a digital age. And that computational thinking aspect becomes very, very significant. So when, be it robotics, be it STEM, be it coding, I think from what the NGGS standards focuses more is on students' computational thinking practices and how they can become science science citizens in their community. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think it's cuts across what I was thinking about. Yeah. Thanks.
You're welcome. I think we're at the top of the hour, Dean, but I'm happy to hang out
We
as long as
are.
we need
I know,
to.
Anna, you had your hand up for a while, so I'm not sure if your question got answered or you withdrew.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just curious. So, Wes, what inspired you to focus on digital pedagogy? Because your PhD is curriculum instruction, right?
Right. Yes. Well, I guess I've always been a geek when it comes to computers and technology and communication. I don't know if this is in your DNA, but my grandfather on my mother's side was a ham radio guy, and he loved, talking to people all over the world with ham radio. I've just always loved technology and communication technology. I did write my dissertation about phone casting, which was when I don't even think these tools are around. You would call a number and you could record and it would go into a podcast. And we did a whole study with a freshman health class as students summarized chapters, and we're using phone casting. I think good pedagogy isn't necessarily going to be good because it uses technology. One of the things that I haven't mentioned, and this is, I have these different ideas for books, and I don't know, Dean, if you found this, that you may not be quite as active and writing and producing as you were in your younger years. But I have wanted to make a book. I think I have it. Yep, here's the link. About a lesson cycle called Design, Create, and Share. And I try to do this in my lessons. And so this link you can find, it's just designcreateshare.com. And I haven't fleshed this out hugely, but I think it's really wonderful when you are, I don't even know what I've got in
How many
here.
domain names do you own, Wes?
Too many, and my wife wants me to sell many of them. Yeah, so I had like 30 websites for a while. Design the lesson. What do you want students to do? What skills do you want them to acquire? And what kind of an experience are you going to have them engage in individually or collaboratively to engage with content and develop skills? Then have them create something. Have them create some kind of representation of their understanding, some kind of media that could be a media product, and that's where Show with Media comes in. Pick a product. We're doing sketch notes right now. We're learning about Wikipedia, and my kids are creating a sketch note about this video that a wonderful YouTuber named John Green created about 5 years ago, called Crash Course Navigating Digital Information. And so, hello and welcome to Crash. We're in the process of sketchnoting this. Anyway, after you create that product, then you go back and you share it with others. So again, my pedagogy wouldn't be use technology. And I think sometimes for those of us that do use a lot of technology, people see this and we're like, oh, you just like using technology. And I do. But that's not what makes learning exciting. And it's not even exciting, engaging, effective, transformative. You all may talk about the SAMR model, right? Being at a substitution level all the way up to a transformative level. I'm interested ideally in changing people's lives for the better. And so, we can do things that we're simply tested on, and, we take in the information, we regurgitate it. And that's what Paulo Freire calls the banking model of education. But if we're going to want to be transformative, we have to take different approaches. And I find that when students create media, when they share, when they become the teacher, even for a little bit, that really changes the dynamics of learning, often in a positive way, and it can deepen the learning and make that learning sticky. And so I would describe myself not as really having as much digital pedagogy as wanting to encourage the appropriate use of digital tools to support effective and transformative pedagogy? Great question.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wes, thanks so much for your time, and just I think what you did, I hope for these folks is laid out the plethora of projects and things that you're involved with. And the other thing that I do know for a fact is that you would be more than willing, and in fact probably thrilled, if somebody reached out to you and said, hey, I'd like some more, I'd like the idea you shared about X. What else might you share? Because as you see, Wes is no short of resources. He has been, I mean, oversharer is one way of putting it, but he's been so generous and kind of understanding what we used to call, I don't want to call it anymore, the gift economy, but the way in which people have developed these habits of sharing and giving away. And he mentioned this K-12 online conference that he helped facilitate, which was pretty epic back in the day. One of the very first of its kind, and just really demonstrated kind of Wes's desire to give back and share his insights and whatever he gives. And I probably, if I went back, I couldn't even tell you all the things that I've stolen and or utilized from Wes's repository of stuff.
And relationships, that's something that's so important. And there is a lot of fear that people have when it comes to sharing. But yeah, I would absolutely agree with what Dean said. I've received so much from so many people over the years. And so being able to share, being able to learn, and then make personal connections with other teachers. Because if folks are in your tribe, hey, I'm teaching middle school. Hey, I'm interested in oral history or whatever. There's so much value we can bring as we're filters for all this information and all these tools. We can really help each other and energize each other. And I thrive on that. I love that. That's like rocket fuel for my passions and for my teaching. So,
and what would be, I mean, well, I can share with you the recording and chat for sure, but what would be like the best place to start? Is it wesfryer.com, Speed of Creativity? Or do you like people to
So
start?
when I well, you can just go to wesfryer.com. When I was at that Cairo workshop, there was a fellow there that had this after page. And so I created this, and it's just wesfryer.com/after. So I've got linked up here to the different social media channels that I have. I write a very iterant Substack, which I should try to do more often. But I've got handouts of webinars, videos, things like that. Podcasts. My wife and I are empty nesters. We started a podcast in January. So still doing a little blogging, still doing a little podcasting, but connecting to each other, whether it's on Facebook, if you're on Blue Sky, Threads, LinkedIn, any of these channels. I usually share things throughout the week. So, but the whole thing about interaction, I miss Twitter. I miss Twitter. I love Twitter. I learned so much from people, but it just became morally impossible for me to support Elon Musk and his platform anymore. And so I just don't participate in that platform. But there's other places that we can connect, and there's lots of other educators that are eager and passionate to learn and to be able to share. And these organizations and things that Dean and I have been involved with through the years, we always have fads that come and go, ed camps, online conferences, all kinds of things. But the tools are even more powerful than they were back in the day. And it's pretty awesome to be able to connect with others that are passionate, that want to learn together. So kudos to all of you for your program that you're in. You've got a great instructor. He's not paying me a thing to say that. And he really is. He's a joyful human being who loves teaching and has loved education. And he's a great granddad. And what more can you say than being a good,
that's
good,
my best role at the
being a
moment.
great grandparent. There you go. That's what my wife is living for. She's ready to retire. Won't be able to do it quite yet, but she's ready.
All right. Well, Wes, all the best. I hope we can connect soon. The next time I'm in Charlotte and the area, I will connect, and we'll.
Please do. Well, best of luck to all of you.
All right.
The work we do is important, so keep the faith. No matter what happens in a week, we will persevere and we will continue to fight the good fight to help educate the next generation to become good humans and to be kind and caring people who want to build a better tomorrow. Even
You
if
bet.
not everybody wants to do that. We'll keep doing that in education.
We'll keep doing it anyway. All right.
That's right.
Thanks, Wes. Take good care.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, let's take we have two. We have the K's today. Kathleen and Kelsey are gonna do their content bit. So we can take let's take 6 minutes and think about 8:15 as our time to come back, and then whoever goes first, and we'll go from there. See you in a bit.
Oh, something that you will maybe teach never, but you could possibly bring it in. It's easy as showing a video, telling them exactly what we did today. So I will be planning on doing that in my own health class. So yeah, we're gonna get into groups and we're gonna do that. I think it's gonna be groups of 5 is my plan. Dean, I don't think I have the ability to make breakout.
Yeah, right, because I need to make co-hosts. In the meantime, would you be able to copy and paste those 6 things into the chat so we could see them,
Yeah.
and remember them? Now you should be able to do it. Perfect.
Breakout rooms. I'm gonna just make 4 breakout rooms, and I don't know how many. I think that says 3 to 4, so we'll go with that. Well, you'll have 10 minutes in that room. So, all right, here we go. And go.
Okay, I have one more thing. I'm thinking about this. The last one, being able to observe and change or correct your views, just like showing kids to have the humility to admit if you're wrong and that it's okay to change your view on something. Like, it's okay. Almost feels like it's not okay.
Yeah, it's a perception. Perception changes. So it's always good to teach kids like when you think something is right, then if you have a second thought of it, it's like having a second thought of something before saying it. And I think it's very, very important, especially in this time and age we live in, that students need to be able to think very well about their learning. Yeah, they need to think over and over and over again, even when making decisions. They just don't rush. That's part of self-regulation. Even when you're making decisions, you need to think over it before you say something else. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Does anybody want to share what their group said?
I'll go
Yeah,
for 4, I
go ahead.
suppose. Um, we talked a little bit about a couple of things, but for the most part, most of those things I've found have just naturally occurred if you're doing like an inquiry project, like that interpretation or like evaluation part of the finding credible information and that sort of thing kind of fit hand in hand. So I'm doing one right now, and it's very easy to have that conversation about what is it you're finding and where is it coming from? What's on it? Who's the author? Even like the date, right? Everyone I think would know what the crap test is. I do the crap test with them still. Like I know it's like maybe a little bit young for them, but it works so well because now they have like legitimate questions that they can answer when they're looking at a website, right? So we did that. But maybe our other partner wants to talk about her like real life situation. Lisa talked about maybe applying it to like a person, like an adult, and maybe having them maybe look deeper into some stuff that they're looking into because they're more of like a conspiracy person. Maybe Lisa wants to talk about
Paper
that.
towel. Sorry, my dog just peed on the floor apparently too. Yes, goodbye.
And then is that
Go figure it out. Sorry. I have a friend who I've been friends with her for forever, but her midlife crisis, I feel like, is becoming a conspiracy theorist. And I am trying to help her realize these things as an adult in her late 30s. And it's embarrassing that we have people in their late 30s who can't analyze this. Like, no wonder our teens can't if they can't.
Well, the other thing I was talking about too is just sort of the overall erosion of trust of society. Like who even is the authorities anymore? I mean, we saw during COVID that at some point doctors lost their ability to, like, people didn't believe them. And it's like, okay, wait, at one point we actually thought, well, at least we can trust our doctors again. And now that became eroded. And so I think along with the conspiracy theories concept, like it's very difficult. And of course, when these institutions and or people do occasionally misspeak and share something untrue, whether it's a media source or an authority or whatever, like, I mean, you know, we've lost trust in policing. Like people are, there's lots of people who think police are terrible people and it's just a terrible institution and we got to get rid of it and so forth. And it's like, I mean, and it's just because it's amplifying the negative. If it's a small group, they get and it's like, yeah, but most people are actually kind of decent, and most teachers and policemen and doctors are pretty good at what they do. They go through a kind of a rigorous training to get to where they get. Doesn't mean that bad ones can't come through and happen, but as a whole, those institutions I feel like are still pretty solid, that we should trust them. But that's what I think I kind of fear is, like, how do we not lose the trust? Like, I mean, imagine being a politician today. Like it's like the worst job. Everybody hates them. Like, doesn't matter what you are, they'll hate you.
And we've
And,
kind of said question everything when you're reading online, and people have taken it too far in the
Yeah.
other sense too, right?
It's not a great way to live. Like, it's just not a great way to live, but unfortunately that's, we have to, now we're overcorrecting with all of this to try to make sure that we are, not getting duped and understanding what it is that's being presented in front of us nonstop. All right, Kathleen, thank you, Kelsey. Unless you had any other things you wanted to add.
No, I think that was it.
Thank you for that. That was great. Kathleen, take us home.
Yes. All right. So I'm looking at the clock, so I'm going to try and keep it short and sweet too. So we've kind of all, I think kind of understood now that media literacy is quite an umbrella term, and there's lots of different things involved in what media literacy is altogether. In my presentation and with the resource provided, there was a kind of a big consensus that critical thinking is a very large role of what it means to be media literate, which Kelsey also just touched on there. She did a really great job showing how to think critically when looking at advertisements and things. And then I think it's important to know too that you can apply those skills when looking at other media, such as the news and your own media or social media and kind of just other media. So my discussion questions are kind of a continuation of how Kelsey started us off, and just kind of more to really self-reflect and assess on your own abilities. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. This is the first time of me ever trying this, so let's all hope this works. All right. Okay, sorry. Are you able to see anything at this point, or no?
Yeah, we see the crap test.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Sorry. Like I said, this is the first time. I didn't know. So just with the first kind of discussion question for you, will be thinking of that crap test. If you watch the video there, it's kind of just thinking of some questions like, when was it created? How relevant is it? Is it a reliable source? How accurate? Things like that. And I just want you to think, how confident do you feel in your ability to critically evaluate news sources? So not just advertisement ones, but this time thinking about news sources. It's kind of a two-part question. So what specific skills do you believe you possess, and where do you see room for improvement? So that could just be one area, thinking to the critical, the key parts of critical thinking that Kelsey just shared. Maybe it's part of that, or thinking of even just the crap test. Maybe you look at the time of it, but don't actually take the time to look where it was, who shared it, or digging deeper to see if it's actually reliable. So just to think of that. I will put the question in the chat as well. I will put you into groups. I'm just going to do 4 groups again. And I'll just give you guys like quick 5 minutes to share, just to make it quick and sweet so we're not going over time. If that's okay. I don't know if is everyone back now? Yes, looks like it. Does anyone want to share what their group discussed? We kind of dove deep into other areas as well, but anyone wants to share what your group discussed at all with some of your skills you might feel you're good at, or ones you want to keep working on?
I can go. We felt like when news was about opinion instead of fact, we all didn't feel confident.
I personally admitted that I'm known to be gullible and believe what people tell me and believe what I read and what I see. I'm convinced it's because of the time that I was born and that we were going on the internet and nobody really understood it, and we didn't really get this kind of education. So I'm figuring it out later in life how to be more critical, and I'm working on it.
Awesome. I was saying to Dean, I did have a couple other questions, but I'm not going to make you guys break out into groups and keep talking for the quick 2 minutes. So I'm going to add them at the bottom of my blog post of the week. So if you want to look at them, you can just reflect on it there. So.
Thanks, Kathleen and Kelsey, and thanks everybody. Yeah, I would just kind of end. I think one of the best things we can do for our students and our kids is to be able to very freely say, yeah, I don't know about an issue, rather than feeling super compelled to everything that comes across our way, having to have an opinion or feeling like we understand it. Just saying, yeah, not sure. There's a lot of things going on, and let me think about it for a while. But there's seems to be always such a rush to take a position and think about things, when I think it's a much healthier way to just say, like, yeah, you don't have to know all the answers. You can say, yeah, I'm confused. There's conflicting ideas here. And I mean, you think about, these two world wars that are happening right now with Israel and Palestine and Ukraine and Russia. And, those are a couple of examples. I was like, yeah, I'm not smart enough to give you a real strong answer on it, because they're number one, I know they're complicated. Number two, there's a lot of different perspectives. So you don't have to have an opinion on everything. You get to say every once in a while, yeah, I don't know, or yeah, that's one issue that I can't care about everything all the time, right? Like, we just don't have the capacity. Like, good for you if that's a thing that means something to you and that's important to you, but not everything has to be important to everybody. So, and we got to give people a little break from that when they don't, when they aren't waving a flag or putting up a sign. It's okay. It's okay. You don't have to. You can be that way. Anyway. All right. Well, yeah, top of the hour. Thank you again. And thanks so much for, I so appreciate the way you're engaging with one. Just even, it was nice, Jason, your question to Wes, and the fact that you'd done a little bit of research ahead of time. And again, I don't ask you to take a deep dive into any of these things. It's a lot, but I mean, I think that it represents, I think, some, engagement and effort on your part, and even reading some of your blogs this week, and a lot of your referenced last week's class and so forth. I think I'm really enjoying the fact that people, and as I don't know if I meant, we said it yesterday, but I hope that, or last class, but I hope that at least one speaker or class this week takes you down your own rabbit hole. I hope everybody gets to have a rabbit hole, whatever that is. It's not going to be everybody every time, but I hope there's at least one rabbit hole, get deeper dive into that. So I hope that happens. Next week we have another good friend of mine, a foremost leader in technology innovation, and what I'd love for you to challenge him with in terms of questions or think about is, like, what is he as a district, a school division leader, think about teachers, expect of teachers and principals in terms of their of what they need to do. So that can be kind of a theme for next week. Chris Kennedy, I put a link in the next week. Also, I think everybody filled out that form about their projects, although Jason Taylor talked to me about it, and Kelsey, you didn't fill out that form yet about your project. So if you can do that, and I'm gonna have a look at them this week and reach out to some of you. Like, some of them it's very straightforward, but I'll message you, email you, somehow connect with you around that one. And if you want to talk further about it, we can do that as well. So yeah, happy Halloween. Have fun with that. Have fun. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you next week. I'll be in the US on election day, so that could be fun. That could be a fun time. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what it's going to be like, but hopefully it'll all be okay. We hope. Anyway, take care, everybody.